this session. Representative Yarborough will open us up with a prayer.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, that we can come to you this morning. Lord, we thank you for the privilege to be here and to wrestle with these issues for our children, for our seniors, Lord. We love them. We thank you for the privilege to serve our state, or to serve our people. Lord, we just ask that you give us wisdom, Lord, guide us, help us, Lord, that we would help and serve so often the least of these, and that, Lord, we would just glorify you as we help each other in the duties before us. We ask for your help and your wisdom. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Representative Shaver.
Here.
Representative Estes.
Here.
Representative Boyd.
Here.
Representative Carnes. Representative Drummond.
Here.
Representative Moore. Representative Green. Representative Ross. Representative Wadsworth.
Here.
Representative Yarborough.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. At this moment, I would just like to take a moment of personal privilege just to recognize Dr. Boyd and just how thankful we are that she is with us and able to continue serving. She's been through a lot over the break. She did not have a break. She had a rough time. But she's a miracle, and we are thankful for her and glad to have her back with us. Today we have 3 bills on the calendar. The first 2 are public hearings. The third bill has been requested by the sponsor to be carried over. For the public hearings, we have some who have already signed the list to speak. The speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. It is by practice not to take a vote on the same day as a public hearing, and so we will not have a vote on these bills today. So I will bring up HB 235 first. Just over here. There he is, just in time.
Okay, wow.
Do you need to breathe a minute?
Yeah, I was supposed to tell Corley if I could make insurance to make a quorum. I'm not going to make it right now. Thank you, Madam Chairman, members. The intent of this bill, and I know we're having a public hearing and not voting on this, I've heard from a lot of people, so I am so open to meeting with all of them. The intent of the bill that I filed, it's simple, but it's obviously a complicated issue, is that I had been to these education conferences. In fact, my good friend, Representative Drummond, goes to the same conference that I go to every year. And we hear about a lot of things that young people are dealing with. The amount of time, a lot of issues obviously deal with schools. And it comes from that. But this bill is bigger than just schools. It's talking about the state of Alabama not allowing a person who is under the age of 16 to have their own social media account without having their parental consent. That is the intent of this bill. I thought about doing it last year. I didn't drop it. This year I had LSA working at the bill. I did not have an opportunity to work with all the interested parties. So what I did was very simply, we put in an age verification so that if you went to a social media site and if you were not the age of 16, you couldn't open that account. Currently, as I understand it, federal law does not allow for someone 12 and under to have their own account. I am trying to change that in Alabama to make it, you have to be 16 to have your own account. I'm not talking about adults. If an adult goes in and opens an account for their child, you know, that's the parent's right. I've had a lot of people come up to me that I need to sit down with. I'm sure they're behind me, that want to be excluded from the bill. I have had one, which I think some of them are very reasonable. They're you know, about interactive gaming. I've heard from Comcast, I think, and so I'm telling the members of this committee and Madam Chairman that I'm going to speak with these people. I probably can't do it this week because of my schedule, but I'm going to sit down with all of them to try to achieve my objective. I may have a long meeting with Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and they have made a suggestion about placing this on the App Store and putting it in the hands, the responsibility of Apple and Google. So I need to sit down with Apple and Google and perhaps Meta and say, what do y'all think about this? Because I think, at one point I've heard from Google and they were thinking they could be excluded. But then Meta has suggested maybe we change this. I do know other states have passed bills in this arena. I am going to look at those bills. I know Mississippi and Louisiana have passed bills, but I think Representative Robbins has a bill that y'all are going to have a public hearing on next. I think his bill does a little more than my bill, but I want the members of the committee to know all this bill does, and all my intention of doing was to stop children under the age of 16 from having their own social media accounts. And with that, I promise you I'll be working and talking to people, and hopefully I'll be back.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your willingness to work with the interested parties. Because your intent is good, and to try to make sure that we throw around the phrase unintended consequences all the time. So I appreciate you working with those groups. We will look forward to seeing what you make of it. Are there any questions from Representative Foster from the members?
Madam Chair. You and I have talked and we have like minds, and I appreciate you doing this, but I want you to talk a little bit more about if a parent, because I agree with your bill, but if a parent sets that up, don't you think a parent should be held accountable for that?
Well, that would be, Representative Drummond, I've thought about this too. That would be if the bill is saying that and perhaps it could be interpreted this way. I'm not saying it couldn't. That would be saying that no child can have a social media account, even if their parent opened it for them. And I wasn't trying to go there. I feel like if you have decided for your child that I want them to have a social media account, even at the age of 15.
You go to 12 is the federal
Well,
law
yeah,
right now.
Yeah, they'd be 13
And
now.
I think that, I guess I asked that question because we see so much violence that is on social media, from bullying and so forth, and it can lead to so many other bad consequences for other innocent children.
Yes.
I know of a young lady who actually committed suicide because she was bullied on social media.
Yes,
And I know of another little girl who is going through treatment right now because they said that she was sexually promiscuous, which she was not. And nobody could do anything about it. So I applaud your bill. I really do. But I think parents should be held accountable because these are minors that are doing things that will have a consequence to innocent other people.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Darvin. And I'm certainly going to be looking at that issue as I talk to all these parties and look at other legislation. But I share your heart. Same.
I don't want you to share my heart. I want you to share my policy.
we share that too on vaping, don't we?
We do.
Are there any other questions from members for Representative Foster at this time?
Thank you.
I will recognize, and please, if I mispronounce your name, please correct me. Amy Bose from Met Choice. And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Amy Boss. I'm the Director of State and Federal Affairs at NetChoice. We're a principles-based trade organization in DC. We work to make the internet free for free expression and free enterprise online. At its core, we have issues with HB 235 from both the policy front and the constitutional front. So first, we believe HB 235 would violate the First Amendment by blocking access to lawful speech. It requires social media companies to verify the age of users and restricts access to social media for those under 16. We've seen in other cases, the government cannot restrict speech based on content, and the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that minors, just like adults, have First Amendment protections online. So for example, in California, there was an attempt to impose parental consent for video game purchases, which was struck down because it infringed on minors' rights to access protected speech. We believe 235 would face similar constitutional challenges. From a policy front, the bill presents significant privacy concerns. Collecting and storing sensitive data for age verification would make social media platforms prime targets for hackers, putting users' personal information at risk. While the bill intends to protect minors, it could create more harm by exposing them to security threats. And let's keep in mind, this isn't just about kids. Adults too would have to show either government ID, some sort of verifying who they say that they are. Rather than heavy-handed mandates, we do recommend that Alabama focus on improving online literacy programs, as states like Florida and Virginia have done. Educating students and parents about how to safely use social media is a more effective approach than imposing age verification schemes that are likely to face legal challenges and put user privacy at risk. To that point, I do appreciate the sponsors' offer to meet, to work on this legislation, to improve it, to make sure it's narrowly tailored and does not have unintended consequences. So we do ask for opposition to HB 235, recognizing a vote is not taken today, but look forward to working with the sponsor to improve the legislation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Would you go back to the area where you talked about policies as it relates? You said, I think Alabama should follow, I believe you said Florida. And I didn't get the other step, but would you slow down a little bit and go through that about policies and explain just a little bit more?
Absolutely. And I'll kind of touch on this on the next bill as well, but Virginia and Florida have incorporated into their school curriculum digital literacy programs. So, you know, we don't give kids keys to their car and say go off and drive, and we shouldn't do that for social media either. We need to educate both parents and young people how to safely navigate the internet, make sure they know red flags, when to share information, when not to share information. We at NetChoice also strongly support strong privacy laws as well. So we think those avenues will not raise some of the constitutional concerns that other provisions of this bill have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boss.
Boss.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next I will recognize Knox Argo.
Thank you, Madam. I have a very simple request of the committee, and that's the bill be amended to exclude video games. I have language here, which I will be glad to give to the committee, which is just that for both bills. The problem with both bills, I think you'll hear from people today, is the definition of the social media. That language right there, I actually stole it from Senator Katie Britt's bill that's in Congress, which exempts video games. I've spoken to the sponsors of the bill. I think they might find out a friendly amendment. As an observer of this, I think you got two bills. You should have one bill. It's kind of complicated. It needs to be worked with the bill that passed last session about verifying minors. And I think the committee, you won't need to call me on the other bill because my comment's the same. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Are there any more questions or comments from the committee members concerning HB 235?
Madam Chairman, I would like to get a copy of those bills for Florida, Virginia. I'd like a chance to review those. I mean, let's all be honest, we can sit there and tell children all day long what they need to do. More often than not, they're not gonna do it. And the more we tell them not to do it, the more tempted they are to do it. And so while that, I'm sure those state's bills are very well intended, I would like to see how those have been written, just to give us an idea of what options we might have that are available. I agree with my colleagues on both these bills. I think there needs to be some protections put in for children because they have access to things that can be very harmful at an age when they're not really mature enough to make those decisions. As a former 30-year journalist, I'm definitely concerned with censorship, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to censor anything. I would just like to review those bills to see what options might be available to us that might work. I'm just fearful that training programs in themselves may not be sufficient to address the needs that the sponsors of these bills have.
Representative Yarborough.
Madam Chair, just to re-echo that, I have 4 children, and we had a scenario where through the use of internet unintentionally by a child that sees moving in the context of Angry Birds and other harmless online things, the child sees a moving ad and clicks it, and then went to a page that through social media to a page that had very inexplicit, very just gross videos and things, and so there's malicious actors out there that we have to be aware of, and that children who don't even know what they're doing, the unintended consequences, there's some level that we have to be the adults in the room and protect, because when they ask for bread, we don't want to give them a serpent. So
Thank you, Representative. Next, I will call HB 276, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, and I will say, I've been trying to talk with David, but trying to get David alone for 5 minutes is like trying to catch a fan.
I resemble that remark.
I will completely agree with what TechNet said. We do need a law like Florida, which is why I proposed my bill. Florida has a bill that passed last session that said age verification for social media and pornography. Last session, I passed a bill, worked on a bill, we all passed about age verification for pornography. The only reason social media wasn't involved in that bill because it initially was 2 summers ago, or 3 summers ago when I first drafted it. But I knew the tough nut to crack that social media would be, so I said, take first 1 bite at it through pornography, and the next session, once it gets that passed, then go and work on the social media issue. And my bill is a little more voluminous than Representative Faulkner's, but it goes into a few more details also, I'll go back to the TechNet point. If you like her idea, then vote for my bill. Section 12 in my bill has exactly what she discusses, which is the Department of Education would set a curriculum to train on social media literacy. And in fact, 2 sessions ago, I had that exact same bill from Florida on social media literacy. It got voted down in committee and ed policy. And the reason is they said, which was a valid point, that's why I hadn't brought it back up, is mandatory, because they said, we're going to teach financial literacy, we're going to teach this, we're going to teach that. When are we going to have time for math and science and reading if we keep adding all these mandatory classes? And so,
Keep looking at me because those were my questions.
yeah, and so I thought, you're right. I mean, it's a great idea. And so what we phrased it now is it's an alternative. But have the Department of Education create a curriculum that if a child has the time, they can take it, but not mandated on the child, whereas Florida mandated it. Our Section 12 allows flexibility, but will say, kind of create us a curriculum so people could learn that. So I do agree that children need to learn it because social media is a reality, and learning how to use LinkedIn, learning how to find jobs is a reality, learning that maybe you shouldn't communicate with this adult online. And so I completely agree. Like, Florida is right. We do need age verification for pornography and social media, and we do need to teach kids how to use it. And these topics have been voted on and voted down and discussed. But in terms of what my bill does, where it It slightly differs from Representative Faulkner's, but it's the same concept. We don't want kids under 16 using social media. Mine allows a little more flexibility in that a parent could allow it, but it sets parameters on all accounts under the age of 18 must be considered minor accounts. So what a minor account means is that it will place warnings on the amount of time you've used it. Parents have full access to the account, and a minor cannot receive messages from an adult. So unless they are already friends with that person. So that means I couldn't just find a 16-year-old and start messaging them if that was the law in Alabama. I would have to be that person's uncle or have a relation to them to be able to start that messaging communication. And in my bill, what we've seen productive in other states is that the social media platform must provide reports to the Attorney General every year on everything from sex trafficking cases that they've uncovered on their platform, drug sales, gun sales, and how they actually respond to violations of policies, whether that means a violation of speech that they then censored, or it's that they found someone using it as a platform like Snapchat to sell drugs and guns. What did you do about it? Anything. Just, we need to know that. There needs to be information. Are they actually doing anything? And then the most important thing is, as long as you are under the age of 18, you will have a minor's account, which means parents have full access and all messages would be available to the parent to see. And the parent could terminate that account at any time. So, my bill has those few things that go beyond what Representative Faulkner's does, but mine doesn't have the pure outright ban because of, I was trying to figure out a way to get around. Basically, she is right. Children do have First Amendment rights to speech, but their rights are limited. So what we can say is you have the right to this material, but your parent has the right to shut it down at any time, and we will limit what that speech is that you're able to see. And she is right in some ways, but also includes that just last month, the Supreme Court heard a case on the age verification process, and they seem very receptive to the idea that age verification is a valid way to go about gatekeeping. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know y'all probably got your questions out with David, but happy to answer them. Yes, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you. Go back when we talk about the curriculum part, the educational part. I agree with you about reading and the basic. But have you thought about considering it could be an alternative course, a part of a course that's already there that relates to that? And then go a little deeper, maybe choose honor, the side of honor curriculums. Would you just elaborate a little
Yes,
bit?
ma'am. Well, I taught with so about starting 2 years ago, I started talking with the Department of Education on that actual issue. And that was kind of what was envisioned, is giving them the discretion of offering as an alternative or rolling it into some already existing class that it could be a 2-week portion of, but not tell them what to do with it, but tell them to create this and then you plug it how you see fit.
Madam Chair, I've got several representative problems. First, can you be a little bit more specific for me? In the bill, you talk about commercially reasonable. Tell me, what is that?
So
I didn't see a definition for that term.
commercially reasonable is, as she mentioned, the concern for security even for adults. Well, there are apps that you can create, so you can upload your information. So the two options really are, you give them a government issued ID to show you're of age, or use a commercially reasonable method. Commercially reasonable method would be, like right now, in some states, not in our state, but in some states, you could buy a lottery ticket through an app or on the phone. You don't always have to show your ID, but what you can use are several methods. One is you can use this anonymous ID app where you verify your age one time, and then that anonymous identity It's kind of your online identity where you've been verified, and you could plug that in. And there are also other companies out there that might not be on the anonymous side, but they can securely say, this is an adult, this is Barbara Drummond, and if they verified your age.
Okay, I got a lot, but I'm gonna ask one other question. I saw in the bill that all of those inquiries would go to the Attorney General's office on the punitive side, correct? But yet you've got, the Department of Education is also included, even if they're doing just an at random class for this course. But you put money in the bill for the AG's office, but there was no funding for the Department of Education. And I wanted you to, because even to create it on an as-need basis, it's going to cost the Department of Ed. And as I said before, they've got so much on their plates. And then I saw, and I'm doing the two bills in Representative Faulkner's bill, which I'm online with, parents are being held accountable here. In your bill, it seems like the accountability is on the side of the Department of Ed and those users, and less on the Department of Parents, even though it's affecting minors.
Sorry.
Okay, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I sort of inferred when I read it. Because I think parents ought to be held accountable. You know, we're in a state where there are so many, this stuff is really killing our children.
It is killing our children. I would disagree that the burden is being placed on the social media company itself.
Okay, tell me who is it being placed, so correct me.
So it's being placed on the social media company. The social media company has to verify that age. It has to prove. So imagine you walk. We're talking
under Representative Faulkner's bill, you know, if parents are going to have to.
Our bill has the exact same language on reasonable methods of age verification. So the age verification must be done by that social media company. The parent. So my bill actually expands the rights of the parents, because his bill says at 16 you get full access to social media. My bill then allows the parents still to have access to any minor account all the way up until the age of 18. So that way, parents do need to be held accountable, but because social media companies deny that parent access and the information that is on the minor account, that parent needs to have that access. The parent needs to see, because how can you hold a parent responsible when Meta will embed the data and you can't get to it? I couldn't go see it. I couldn't see a message.
That's that empirical context that you were talking
about. Right,
and
so, you know, and also what the bill does is, so there's a book written by Jonathan Haidt. It's called The Anxious Generation. I reached out to him last spring to say, help me with this bill. He connected me with the Center for Humane Technology. The director of the Center for Humane Technology created infinite scrolling, which is a reference to the bill. Infinite scrolling and push notifications are the most addictive features of social media and even our cell phones. So what those are is when you go to Facebook and you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you can scroll infinitely, forever. My bill would say if you have a minor's account, you cannot do that. We will not allow infinite scrolling. We will not allow push notifications. We will not allow those addictive products on the social media apps, because a minor can't do that. So we're putting all this burden on the company, who we view as the wrongdoer. That if you read that book, which even says the social media technology and phones have made children more anxious, more depressed, have more just anxieties, and just they are suffering, and they are becoming more lonely as individuals and people. And so what we're saying is, you are doing this harm, so we're figuring out a way to place the burdens on you. The issue with the reason the Department of Ed and the AG's in there is that someone needs to hold them accountable. So the burden is on social media companies to do it. The AG's over here saying, you didn't do it, so I'm going after you. So there's no burden on the AG, and the Department of Education is.
You've got a funding mechanism in there for the AG's office,
right,
but there's nothing in there for the Department of Ed. That was my last question.
And the funding mechanism is really just the collection of fines and fees. So
Why ain't part of that going to the Department of Ed to create this curriculum?
I would be open to that. I mean, I just said, you collect the fine, you just keep the money. I don't have a problem with diverting some of the money to education.
I mean, if they have to create a curriculum, it's going to be a cost.
Right, but but if you read the language, it's may. We're not mandated they create the curriculum. We're just stating we would like you to create the curriculum. So working with the Department of Education, because they are so strapped, they did not want a mandate to create it. So if you read section 12, it's they may create a curriculum.
Well, we
So that's
hope
why.
they will.
We hope they do, but we don't have a funding for it because we're
But
not mandated.
it may
no
or
unfunded
shall
mandate.
or whatever, or mandate, they still will have to incur costs.
Right, if they do it.
Yes.
If
It will
they
still
do.
be a cost.
Right.
Thank you, because I think we need to hold parents accountable.
I think so too. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, just real quick. So explain to me again two things. Explain to me again the mechanism for the control of how, like, on social, if they get friends. Does the parent control that process of how they interact with other people?
No, so my logic is the way I thought about this, and this comes directly from the UK. So it's not I'm not inventing a will here. The UK Children's Code says exactly what I'm saying. And what I thought about was, I mean, I don't know if anybody, y'all know the dating app Bumble.
I have not dated for a long time.
So with Bumble, the female sees the males. So the male does not see the female. So the female gets to be the one to make the initial contact.
Sure.
And I thought, if dating apps can do it, and it's law in the United Kingdom, why can't we make that law in Alabama where adults can't just see children? So children should not appear, and obviously it's already in code, so like that means I couldn't just find, or any adult could not find a teenager or a child and then go send them a message. Because that's where we do see a lot of, so that's what it would be. You just wouldn't show up, and you wouldn't have access to send them a message. So, but if it's like your uncle, the child could find Ernie Yarborough and say, hey, Uncle Ernie, do you want to be my friend on, whatever social media app? And you'd say, sure. So that was the logic there. It gives the children the access, which the parents would know all of their friends. Yeah. Wouldn't necessarily have the full control, but they would know. They would know, like, child one just added so-and-so's friend.
Okay. And another thing is just a point, I think it's an interesting concept in terms of kind of using the free market and capitalism to help deal with some of the issues around human trafficking or exploitation or so forth, because I've been involved in that, my family's involved in fighting against that. And there was a chain of hotels that it was brought to light that they received a big fine because they weren't doing the things that they were required to, and they were being exploited by child traffickers. And all of a sudden they've become one of the biggest allies of finding and eliminating that kind of trafficking behavior. So I think using the free market to help deal with some of these issues is potentially an effective and intriguing thing to look into.
Yeah, nothing in my bill, Florida's bill, takes any constitutional rights or eliminates the free market. You're still able to operate.
Sure.
And my bill, all it says is adults need to know what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We will continue with the public hearing, and the chair recognizes Bishop Jim Lowe.
I want to thank this committee for allowing me this opportunity to just say these few words here. So let's imagine a world where a child as young as 8, innocent and impressionable, scrolling on a device, stumbles upon a graphic violence, explicit content, or predatory messages, all we call social media. Those companies fail to put the proper safeguards in place. Imagine that. But this isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It's happening every day, and it must stop. Social media platforms were never designed for young children, yet countless minors under the age of 12 are engaging with them daily, often without restrictions. Without proper safeguards, they are exposed to cyberbullying, online predators, harmful misinformation, and addictive content that hijacks their developing minds. Studies show that excessive social media used at a young age contributes to anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. And let's not forget the algorithms that are designed to keep users scrolling can lead our children down dangerous rabbit holes of inappropriate material. Listen, we have regulations protecting our children from harmful substances, requiring car seats, and even setting age restrictions on movies. So why should social media be any different? It's time for these platforms to take responsibility. They must implement strong age verification, robust parental controls, and AI-driven content moderation to filter out harmful material. They must limit direct messaging to prevent contact from predators and curb addictive features designed to keep children glued to their screens. This makes it tonight for us to wait. If we fail to act, we are allowing corporations to prioritize profit over the well-being of our most vulnerable. But if we demand change, we can create a digital space where children can learn, they can explore, they can grow, and do it safely. So let's hold social media companies accountable. Let's protect our children. I'm asking this committee to give HB 276 a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. I appreciate your comments. Sorry that we're losing the committee to other obligations, but we appreciate your interest in your comments. Ms. Bose, do you have anything that you want to add?
I don't have a lot to add, but I do want to thank the sponsor. Section 12 is something that we would support, the focus on education, on evidence-based resources. We welcome that provision as well. I will just say, I mean, courts do not view, limiting access to drugs, to tobacco, to R-rated movies. They don't view it the same way that they do speech online. So that is my one flag. I do want to reiterate my concerns with the mandated age verification requirements. So again, this wouldn't just be kids showing ID, it includes adults having to submit information as well. And again, this creates a honeypot of sensitive data. We already know 25% of kids under the age of 18 are victims of online identity theft, and I think it's fair to say that this could make that problem worse. I also just want to add that courts have consistently found that online age verification violate the First Amendment because the laws are not the least restrictive means available to protect kids online. So it was mentioned, a lot of this is playing out in the courts. There are similar laws that are currently enjoined in Arkansas, in Ohio, California, Maryland. So some of this will be played out in the courts. And at the very least, I think it's worthy to wait to see how that plays out to determine the path forward here. But again, the concern here, the age verification, what that looks like, the privacy concerns that it raises is a big concern for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Argyle, I wanted to give you an opportunity in case you had anything
I don't have any
further to
comment
add.
other than we want to exempt video games, like all these statutes that have been passed have done that. The definition in the Alabama bill is kind of vague. Needs some work on it. Probably need to have one bill instead of two. But we do want to exempt the video games, like it's done everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Knott. Well, I do appreciate the sponsors bringing your bills today, and they are committed to continuing to work so that we can address the concerns that have been raised, and the focus is to protect the children, and that's what we aim to do with the committee. Thank you all for attending today, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I did mention that 285 was carried over, so I just want to make sure I